I think I'll start calling these live updates, at least when I post it right away. It's Sunday night, so you'll see this right after I make it. Oh, there are a few things. I wasn't going to speak, and sometimes I think it's beneficial. I mentioned my friend Henry that I got to see yesterday. Now, Henry, he's an exceptional Christian person, Henry. And Henry used to go with me on the Bible studies, and I used to have Henry here. And I resented somewhat that Henry, there were times where certain cops that didn't like homeless, and they got away with things. But I resented it at times when Henry was targeted. And the reason this is going to be part of this little update is Henry used to enjoy going to Timmons because it's a place where you get to eat food. But it was the fellowship. I would spend time with my friends on the street like you see me on the videos. And Henry liked that. And I spent a lot of time over the years just helping Henry, and he'd come back here. I used to have a little box where I kept snacks for the guys, and if I brought them here during the day. So that was a big part of Henry's life, just having fellowship. And yesterday, which was Saturday, I spent a little extra time there because I realized he was enjoying what we used to have, which is just fellowship on a daily basis, and it took place a lot of times at Timmons. And the reason now Henry yesterday, I didn't catch him on video, but he's lost a lot of weight, and he simply does not look well. And Henry stays in a little RV right here where we live. I won't tell you the location. Henry's a very gifted person. And I've often thought maybe he is somewhat autistic because of his gift, his insight, a lot of deep studying in scripture and all, but yet maybe in other areas not saying the Rain Man, but sort of maybe like that. And why is he now somewhat isolated, living in that old trailer? What accomplished that was there was a woman. Now, I've seen this lady, and whenever she saw Henry up at Timmons, she called the police. And I was there at least one time when it happened. And the cops came into the little mission looking for somebody, and it was that lady. And Henry and others thought she was like into the occult, and I'm not sure. But she looked strange. I remember I saw her once in town. I was just maybe taking a bus, and I remember thinking, oh, this is the lady that... But what she accomplished was she destroyed a huge part of Henry's life. And the way she did that was, whenever she saw him, she dialed 911. And on the phone, she would tell the police department here in Corpus Christi, this man is stalking me. And I remember when they came into Timmons, and I might have been sitting with Henry that day, fellowshipping. The cops called, come here, boy, call Henry. A good, wonderful Christian man. And then, what? You just got called on again, son. Henry. 911. We're getting a lot of calls because this woman manipulated it. And he even reminded me yesterday, he said, John, I have 3 IDs. I'd showed the cops my IDs, but that wasn't good enough. The resolution basically was, don't show your face, don't have Christian fellowship. This is what Henry's life was, a big part of it. And just from those constant calls on Henry, and she targeted him. And now if I called, the CCPD told the case I covered, Mr. Toomey, they told him, if you call back again, we're going to arrest you. But they seem to have this particular woman with this accusation, which was false. Instead, they told Henry in so many words, you should have done the righteous, correct thing and investigated exactly what is this woman up to. But instead, she accomplished her purpose in that particular way and destroyed a huge part of Henry's life, which was simply fellowshipping besides eating. And that stuck on me because that was accomplished. I'm watching a documentary right now, very interesting. It's on Netflix, and I like things that are real life. And it might be like 8 or 10 episodes, and I just started the first one, and it was a story, it sounded interesting, of a father who had 8 kids or 7 kids. And it looks like the setting is in Europe somewhere. And they show the real video. But the father committed suicide, and it's covering the after effects of these children. And he seemed very gifted, music and all. It's not saying as of yet whether he was a Christian, but he was trying to raise, and they show all the videos. They did a lot of YouTube, even cassette tapes because he sang and had the kids. And it shows you now the children, the daughters and son as well, that are older. And during the documentary, they're showing all the YouTube videos he made while he was talking to them when they were young, dressed in their little dresses. And the girls on this documentary are watching their dad sing to them on many of these videos he made. And the kids are crying, they're remembering. And it's just very interesting, and it's tragic. Some of the cases, I didn't know how many I would get into, but there have been many cases, maybe, for instance, like a Henry or something, where people were told, maybe this particular lady, some think she's a witch. I would recognize her if I saw her. But in some of the cases, they managed to get these people to go to prison. And later, in other cases, I had a family relative who committed stepbrother, you could say, who committed suicide over, I'm not laughing about this, but it was over an accusation that a lady made in New Jersey about, he's in the same store where I am. Therefore, she reported him for stalking. And he had some type of problems in the past. He shot himself. Lucio committed suicide. Now, I'm not blaming all that on the system, but you had some cases where people were sent up. And in prison, one of the things, because I got the case of the person who was executed Thursday. Inmate is executed after appeal denied. But you have what's called prison rape. Now, some within the system, guards, cops, and some within the system actually enjoyed watching men get anally penetrated by other prisoners. Now, picture some of the cases. I'm not sure if it happened with Mr. Morton, but picture some of the cases where the guys went up in prison, falsely accused, and then they were raped anally by other men. And it was done as a game, like the guards were part of it. The system, people that you see in uniforms, some of those people were enjoying watching, getting paid high salaries. And how do you know that, John? Because they had a federal undercover agents go in, and I believe it was California. There are other cases you could watch. And they knew that those that were in charge, cops, guards, and so forth, were organizing all types of these events. Fighting, stage fights and all. I believe this was California. It came out. There's many of them. So they had some undercover FBI go in, pretending they were prisoners. And this has happened before. And they stayed in the system, in the jail, in the prison, for a period of maybe months, I'm not sure how long. And then they saw, judgment came to those particular, in law enforcement in that one scenario, that they thought they were getting away with things. And there's a time where judgment comes to the house of God. Some of my experiences, I've given some of the cop calling other people that are also law enforcement to follow me, which took place. And the dynamic was, wow, these guys have tremendous power because their jobs are to be out, to utilize radios like I used to use, emergency radios. But those things are supposed to be used for the benefit of the public. But yet they got away with a lot here. And as far as I know, none of that's ever been corrected because these people rose the ranks. It used to surprise me that some of them put word on the street. An officer put word on the street. I talked about this, okay, that he was killed. And that was a rumor that, the best I could tell, was he started. That he was killed in a park downtown. And the guys from the street kept bringing up his name. Man, he was killed, John, he was killed. Finally, I did a video on it. I said, look, I think a particular officer would put that word out, and I said, it's very unprofessional that you would spread that word. And of course, he wasn't killed. But his name, and I thought, it showed me that these particular people, what is your goal when you discuss these things? I've mentioned this before, but some in the system have been unable to deal with their own acts of corruption and all. In the Corpus Christi retirement system, I knew this for many years because we had a different one in Kingsville with police and firefighters. I'm in a retirement system called TMRS, which is a statewide system. Okay? Corpus retirement comes just from the taxes from Corpus Christi. And their retirement is solely dependent upon the city of Corpus Christi. Okay? That's how they did it. We liked the way they did it in the past because we paid into Social Security and into TMRS, the retirement for Texas Municipal Retirement. Corpus Christi, if I remember correctly, the firefighters here and cops, they just paid so much of their check came out by, I guess, every 2 weeks like ours was. But it just went into a Corpus City retirement. And we had to pay both Social Security and... But yes, how stable is the retirement of the city? It's possible, and this happened in Detroit. I'm not joking about this. It's possible if enough light is shined that those guys that retired and had a history of things, not only would they possibly give an account for some of the stuff they did, including bad stuff, but it's possible their whole retirement would go down if judgment came in a proper way. And so there's no, I don't see them as dug in here, okay? And I'm watching things on, we had a case, I'm not going to do a lot of links, so just upload this video tonight. Just in the news, top news, Fox News, not a liberal news organization, because I check it every day. There were these two cops that just got arrested for the killing of a black kid, like 30 years ago. There was 5 people that were arrested, but these 2 cops were involved, and it said on the article of Fox News had it, it said that the people prosecuting them now said if this happened in our day, these cops would be tried for a hate crime, meaning they killed this kid, black kid, because he was black. And these particular officers, along with others that were involved, it was like 30-something years ago. And you see their pictures on the news sites, arrogant, just like we killed that black kid. And it had to do with him being black. It would have been, you could call it a modern day lynching. How they executed him, I don't know, but this is the news now. And people in society think, well, no, they got a lot of things that, you know, I talked today, this is just going to be like a live update. But Tammy's brother, I wrote that note down. I read his final statement. It was, was interesting. He claimed, and it just so happened I know his sister from here, but he claimed that he was set up, and it said in the article, he claimed actual innocence. Some people will say, I want to challenge my case before the Supreme Court, which happened in the past with him. They gave him a stay. But it said he claimed actual innocence, not that there was a problem. And one of the things he said was the corrupt, other prison guards that were corrupt had killed that guard. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But they found no DNA on the shank. There was a homemade knife that they make in prison. They call them shanks. But his DNA was not on the shank, but the only DNA was of a woman, a female. Whether it was the DNA of another guard, you'd think you would... Oh, yes, they said that. They said, oh, it was one of our other investigators that held it. Wow. Wow. So I believe that's Texas, mind you. So when I talk about, I did not get to share, I shared it on the teaching today, which will be the Sunday sermon post that goes up in a few days. I shared sort of like a vision I had this morning, but I won't redo it, and it had to do with what Pastor Bill spoke on. But I also had a dream, and that happened this morning. Sometimes in the gifts, you'll have dreams, you'll have visions, you'll have things, and they sometimes come all at once. And I will share the dream, because I didn't get to talk about the dream. I made the Sunday sermon message right outside of Church Unlimited earlier, so you'll see that, and it was a nice setting. And I also had a dream this morning, and it was me and Guitar Jason, maybe somebody else, and we were sitting in like the old HEB that they used to have here, and we were kind of eating food or something, just like a homeless thing. And I remember in the dream some lady walked by like a civilian, and I've had this happen before, and then gave a look like, oh, I'm going to call the cops on these people just because they're homeless. I had that happen with Yui once. I was just dropping off Yui by the pier here called Dimmitt Pier in Flower Bluff, just dropping him off. As I was dropping Yui off, and he had like a duffel bag. He was just putting it like into some trees on that road. And there's some man walking his dog. Illegally, by the way, had no leash. And he got on his phone, called the cops. Now remember, after I dropped Yui off, I stopped, pulling out, and I was going to tell that man on the phone. I was going to say, I'm dropping off my friend, and I was going to show him my card. He just ignored me and kept calling the cops. And I remember Yui said he's walking his dog illegally. And I felt like going back. I think I did one day. I was just going to see if he was walking his dog. I was going to park next to him. I was going to call the cops on him. But in the dream, because there's an arrogance, and in the dream this lady walked by, saw me and Guitar Jason. I had this dream this morning. And I could see. She looked at us like, we're going to get the cops on you. That's why the Henry thing played on my mind. And then we got up, we're going to move. And as we were walking, it was like, in New York, when I do those walks, sometimes you walk over steel grates for the subways and the heat to come out of the ground. And it was like, that's what I was walking on. There was a bunch of kids on skateboards. And I didn't know what it meant. And then later, sometimes you'll have a dream that will be significant. Its possible interpretation was, as I was walking, I realized these were like a steel grates in front of that store. And parts were missing, like walking over an old train trestle, which I did as a kid, and you got to step because you could fall. And I realized all these people walking in and out, the upper echelons of society, and I was thinking they don't realize they were on shaky foundation, that any minute they could fall through. And then when I woke up, I realized that was more than likely maybe the interpretation of that many are living in society. My daughter said to me, when we made the video today, after I shut it off, she said, oh, Dad, I watched that video where you filmed that cop? I said, oh, yeah. And she said, you know, they've killed bloggers in Mexico and all. I said, well, I posted those links. And she said, we don't want you getting shot. What a wonderful community that citizens live that way. You say, but John, that happens in other communities. Look, the light is shined here. The light's shined here. Those that have done many things, civilians walking in, seeing cops watching porn on the computer. I saw that link. I shared that link. You're out, there's a guy that just got 30 years, a black man. I think his name is Meeks, in the local news. 30 years, a very wrong thing. He was a pimp. How many are sleeping with underage kids that are in law enforcement? How many? He said, that's a slander on us. You had a cop put in prison from this city because he had an ongoing sexual relationship with the girl from the school that he was a security guard at. And I read that case, and others knew. Others knew. His name was McChester. And when I shared all those links, there was another one. And then these are the same people get all this money to get on their phone and say, go pull this guy over, go watch this guy. So do you think, John, ultimately the city will, there have already been businesses that have decided not to relocate because of the reputation of Corpus Christi, which is now AKA Little Mexico, because that comes out on the thing. You say, but John, with this criminality that's taken place, these various things have taken place, they take place in many places. You're correct. What's the proper response that you should have done with my friend Henry? That affects me because he's living in that old RV, and he does suffer sometimes, maybe you could say paranoid delusions. I won't even mention it. Because another woman in town, who Henry thinks is in the occult, every time she saw him, and I was there, she just dialed 911. And instead of the proper response being, dear, you have called on this man Henry multiple times. And like we told Mr. Toomey, we're going to tell you, you've made unfounded stalking charges against the man. And instead, it was, Henry, if we see you again, you're going to get arrested. What have you accomplished? What have you accomplished? How much are you getting paid in this city? How much? What about the accusation that the woman made about Henry? Or the one that my stepbrother shot himself in the head and my father found him? I consider, and then knowing that some of those things officers throughout this country were involved in, at the same time getting paid. So we'll do this little update. I don't see every one of these CCPD in that way, but some are that way. And they rose the ranks, and they had the goal to spread a rumor among my friends that he was shot in a park in downtown. I thought, wow, just when I came back, I thought, these guys are capable of criminal stuff beyond what most of the public think. They just sit. They get paid. I used to have a speak over an emergency radio, central to unit, fire truck, or ambulance, to know that these guys had used it by calling central PD to so-and-so. And we got the killings, the shootings, the robberies, and everything else. Go follow this guy, because they did it multiple occasions. And I've reported all that by talking about it. Because if you make a report in this area of AK Little Mexico, and you dare report it to one of the chiefs or somebody in charge, they laugh about that. Because that's the response I had. So yeah, some of you officers, the prophetic word is, some of you that are in your uniforms now, you won't be cops because you'll get fired, you'll quit your career. That's a prophetic word. Some of you that have felt security in the retirement system, that's also going to come under a test in this area of South Texas, simply because of economic problems. Your whole retirement system comes out of the taxes that go into that citywide system. I believe that can be challenged. Okay, so I don't see it as a viable future to get hired at this department. I don't see that. I see it that mountain that you trust in, that mountain. My friend, I just thought of the name. I gave it a few weeks ago. His name is Chris. Chris had long hair and he had one long fingernail. Okay, why? There's reasons people do that. But he was on the streets for many years, Chris. And he told this story often. But there was a cop that wanted to buy his house. I'm not sure if Chris owns that house or was renting. But he told it a lot, and the last few months others brought it up again. And Chris, the thing I got wrong, I thought Chris was what his trade was, but he was a machinist. I remember that. He was a machinist. He came to South Texas. He actually worked as a machinist here. He was in the union. And my grandfather, who died, and I never met, his name was Amadeo. But that's what he was, and I have his tools here. But he was an alcoholic. He died, I never met him. But what Chris had said many times is a cop, and we know who this cop is, but he wanted to buy that. He's an investor in rentals. And he told the story so much, and I believe it. He said he arrested me, and Chris was in jail here in the county for a period of time until that house went into foreclosure. And that cop bought that as a rental property. And I used to think, I guess they dropped the charge. I don't know the whole thing, but he said that more than once. And I used to think, what a disgrace. How do you think people are going to invest in this area of the country after these things went out? How do you think people will invest when they know that some officers will just be calling the other beach patrol and this one, that one, spend their whole day, pull them over, go find them by Benjamin Paint, which he did once, go here, go here, go here, and all the money going into your department. What a disgrace. What an utter disgrace. And this one thing with Chris, I looked at the other case where you're trying to foreclose or you have legal. My friend Don, the city had him in court 2 years ago. He owns a nice property here where we live and it's paid off. But I saw the summons, the felony appearance, and he showed me the next thing. So he had to get a lawyer. I took him to get his lawyer. He was being charged with high weeds. Court, municipal court, legal action, county. If you don't show up, you're going to jail. It's a felony for high weeds. Corpus Christi. I took my friend Don to the lawyer that day because he doesn't have money. So he had to get legal aid and fight it in court. Well, he won. You're going to foreclose because his grass is high. Well, now he's got the other thing, which I've discussed. Well, because he's got a little pier. So I saw the latest. He's got to show up. And this is how they did. I think the name of the code enforcement who lied their asses off to my daughter. What a disgrace you are. That's documented. What a disgrace you are. So the code enforcement sent him a letter. And the letter's signed like it's a summons, a subpoena. And it's actually signed, and it's a copy. But it's signed, I think the name is John Perez, Code Enforcement Inspector, who we served a warrant on my friend Don because of an anonymous tip that somebody might have threw something into the water. That's enough in this community for the cops to come to your house with a warrant. That if one neighbor said, I saw John throw something over the fence, they can show up at your door with guns, with a warrant, and possibly you get arrested. So I saw that complaint. Don showed it to me the other day. It's got to go to court in November. The subpoena was not delivered by law. Let the world know that the way they sent that subpoena to Don, and I read it, it said because of the pier and one other thing, electrical or something. They said if you don't show up, you're going to be arrested. And I think it said charged with a felony. Do you know that was not sent registered, certified? And by law, if you serve a subpoena, in most jurisdictions, you have some official serve it. So that means this, for those that want to relocate to our wonderful city by the sea, that you might actually get a subpoena for high grass one day. A notice, I got one when all my neighbors did. And it might come in the mail. And people steal from mailboxes. Meaning if somebody stole Don's letter and he didn't know, they would then show up and put Don in jail. Can you imagine that? Because it wasn't a certified letter, it wasn't a registered letter. Most municipalities have like a county official deliver the subpoena. It's the only city I know of that just a regular letter with a copied signature of a code enforcement guy is enough to say, if you don't show up, we're going to arrest you. And then possibly while you're sitting in jail, your home goes into foreclosure. Not because of property tax, not because of behind a mortgage, but it goes into foreclosure because of a code violation that you sat in jail maybe 6 months and somebody bought your property. Now, how do you expect anybody to invest in this community? How do you expect anybody? You can move to this city, and there could be a lady on the street, possibly in the occult, and every time she sees you at the mall, she can call the cops, she can call 911. And eventually you'll be basically confined to living in an RV. A normal municipality that's investigating and say, wait, we've noticed, dear, that you've called on Henry every time you've seen him. And all the other witnesses, you'd think they would ask the other witnesses. I was there that day. They just come in, show me your ID. How much are you getting paid for this? How much are you getting paid? What about those two cops that all those years, it's in the world news, and when you killed that black kid, it was a racist killing according to the official. So all those years you sat on that.